Glenn, I mean, I gotta say, look, like off the record, you're one of the most admired person in the industry. And what can I say? This is a great honor for Transatlantic, for me personally, for everybody. So thank you for taking the time.
Grazie mille. Thank you so much. I am thrilled to do this. I love how you think, and I love how curious you are. Let's see what we can learn.
Let's go. Okay, so 7 questions like the 7 C's, and I'm gonna start with the first one. Okay. Okay, you co-founded an agency that come with a temperature stamp. There is a fact about 72 degree Fahrenheit for those who watch us in Europe. In water, 72 degree Fahrenheit, it gets you to a survival mode up to 40 hours. It's kind of weird because you might think that 72 is kind of comfortable. It's not very comfortable when you are in the water. In a room temperature, it could be comfortable. Now, there are 2 schools of thoughts here. There are those who think that creative minds need struggle to thrive. And so in a 72 degree room temperature, it might be a little bit too comfortable when it's always sunny, right? And there are those who think that when it's not 72 degree temperature, when it's always raining, you're more like, prone to create something. What do you think? I mean, you live in California and what do you think? Do you think that the creative mind is more prosperous when has a weather like London, for instance, or when he has a weather that is always like 72 degrees and sunny?
Well, the weather did factor into naming the company, but it wasn't. It's not the lead. It wasn't the horse. It's the cart. The company was founded as a statement of optimism, and by design, not to have our names on the door. We want to have other people own the idea, the experiment. But when we landed on that, it was sort of like, I think those were the conditions of the moment. And I'm from Seattle. I'm a Northwest guy. John's from Oregon. He's a Northwest guy. We worked in Oregon and went to school in Oregon, worked in Amsterdam. So we're familiar with like the Northern climate and what it does for you creatively. And by the way, we had read at the time that 72 degrees was the optimal air temperature for hominids. Like that was a Scientific American or whatever journal article right when we come. So that's not why we did it, but we were like, well, but I don't think, in my experience or my observation anyway, I don't think it really has a bearing on creative output. I don't think it's a necessary. It might be for some people. There does seem to be a lot of successful commercially creative enterprises like in the Northern Hemisphere and northern climate. But there's a lot of incredible fine art and a lot of incredible commercial art near the equator, And so I just don't think the body of work globally, creatively, proves out that climate, I don't think it drives. I think you have to. I think it's your personal demons are the friction.
That's a great observation, man. It's interesting because I always thought what if Joy Division were formed in Rio de Janeiro? Would the music be different? What if Radio Ads were to form Mexico City or Caribbean, with the Caribbean? It would be different. I read somewhere that's the reason why, some of the most substantial, influential music come from London is because also the weather has a role into it, right? I mean, at least I see with myself, I'm weather dependent, and when it's sunny and there's that sort of happiness, the glass is already full. It seems you don't have any you don't have any struggle, you don't have any trigger. But then you have a great observation. It says no matter what the weather is outside, your personal demon, they're going to play a very good role in it. Yeah.
Everybody's got personal weather going on inside. And I think there's a lot of storm for creative people that they're trying to create their way out of. I really think that. I think the insight about weather is true. I think the weather's inside for everybody. And some people maybe get a little, the hardest thing is starting any project. And so I
Yeah.
think probably it is a little easier to start when you're, you know, I think in
Right.
the colder climates, just because you're not out doing
Definitely.
stuff.
What's the weather inside you today?
I think it's right around 72, maybe 70 to 72. I like high 60s because I do need it a little cold. Like I do thrive on cold. I get more motivated in cold. I do. It gets me started more easily than 72 or higher, and I get kind of lethargic in 90. But you know, I spent spring break in Costa Rica, and there's some creative people around me, and they can't start if it's cold. They need it to be 90 before they get going. So.
Awesome, man. Okay, second question, Glenn.
Right.
When sailing alone across the ocean, it's crucial to be decisive and move quickly into action. To overthink may be really something sort of a deal breaker. Now, as a matter of fact, I read somewhere that overthinking is the biggest waste of human energy. We work in an industry that is undeniable connect to overthinking. We overthink all the time and we second guess ourselves all the time. And that because our ideas go through a lot of layers of approval. So you had to have some sort of like solid, robust self-confidence to not overthink. How can a young creative avoid overthinking? Is there something that they can do?
That's a fucking good question. I wish they taught that. So we should. So this should be taught in schools. I think that I really hit the nail. It comes with the trade, and overthinking comes with the trade, and it is and you do it more when you're younger because you have more self-doubt. You don't really know your voice yet. You're trying to find it, or for the most part, that's a generalization.
Definitely.
And those usually go hand in hand with fear, whether you'll be successful or not, or if your ideas will be eroded or improved through the process or not. And so I think there's a natural inclination to listen to input and then think, is this good or bad? Listen to more input and think, is this good or bad? Watch something happen to your work and ask and wonder, is it good or bad? And so what I have, one of my mantras personally, and also at 72 and Sunny, is try it, then debate it. And if I'm in a room where any person, senior or junior, is starting to just, spin for maybe 10 minutes, I'll just hit pause and say, go try that. Almost anything you're wondering about, you can explore. There's some tool available to us now where you can prototype and get a better view of what the outcome will be. And then you'll know. You'll know. And by the way, if you're worried something will get worse, if you prototype that, what if you leave yourself open to it could actually get better with that pressure? And so on the one hand, just in a very simple neurological level, it takes you out of thought into moving your body takes you out of your brain and puts you into your body. And as a creative person, that's a making state, and that's constructive, and it'll inform you. And then I think that's playing to the growth mindset of creative people. It's you're learning as you make. And so then you'll just find it naturally offsets your overthink. But if you're overthinking, I usually look at that. It's a symptom of being overprotective, maybe having your ego running with the hands on the steering wheel instead of the idea being at the steering wheel. So
that's a great advice. This is the reason why
overact. If you're overthinking, overact.
Overact. But it's funny because you say like go try, go explore, and it's so true. I started doing that myself. Like it's been like a few years now that every time I have thoughts, I put it to practice. I explore it.
That's right.
I think there was Jeff Bezos from Amazon doing one of his interviews. He say, one of the biggest stress comes from non-action. It doesn't come from action. It's when you think about that you need to do something and you are pondering, you have to do something, but you're not going to do it. That's where stress comes from. But when you do it, either it's bad or good, stress is gone because you are doing it. And I think that's also like a great connector to the fear and the ego and the overthinking. I think like once you explore it, then you have one step ahead and you can see for yourself. That's a great advice, man. That's a great advice. Thank you.
I think everybody knows this too.
Yeah.
Everybody has gone for a walk at the minimum to just clear their head or done
Yeah.
a sport. And your whole nervous system goes into focusing on what your body's doing and not what your brain is now in service of your body, not your body's not just remote, prone, and your brain, is making you worry about stuff.
Good. Third question. Traveling the sea is one of the most rewarding experience someone can live through. Now, travel in general is what gives shape to who we are. Fernando Pessoa was one of the most celebrated Portuguese poets. And he said, travel is the traveler. What we see isn't what we see, but what we are. Now, of course, you have done lots of traveling, not just because of your role at the helm of 72 and Sunny, but throughout your career. Is there one thing from your traveling that truly shaped the person you are today?
Yes, that is a very inspired quote to pull, by the way. I'd never heard that.
It's beautiful.
It's so beautifully distilled.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite poets, Fernando Pessoa. If you go to Lisbon, it's it's very much celebrated for get a lemonade in Lisbon, drink a lemonade and think of him. But yeah, it's a great guy.
The traveler is the travel.
Yes, you are what you travel.
Yeah, you are, and you. I think that's the gift of travel as a teacher. That's obviously the best. It's the best teacher in the world. Yeah. I encourage anybody in a creative field to do that more than anything. You know, when they're in school, after school, if they want to skip school for a year, do that. You can't fucking beat what it gives you. And yes, you'll discover the world and how Germans and Dutch people are different from each other, and how and you'll understand, in my case, how an American culture fits into the global culture or Italian culture, pair humor styles, but when you explore, you end up, learning about yourself. So that's the travel forces you to, you discover where you fit and what your voice.
Is there because you went to Amsterdam, you say before, right?
Yeah, that was definitely the formative place for me.
That was a formative place. And
I was 3 years into my career. Nike had just moved to Hilversum. I was at Wieden+Kennedy. Nike had moved to Amsterdam as the European headquarters to grow their global soccer business. Wieden+Kennedy did the same, and I went there on I said I'd go for a year. I was really nervous about it. I was very American, and but 1 year I kept renewing every year, and I did that for 7 years and what I learned there. Well, and from Amsterdam in particular, you learn something different about each place and also about yourself. But the openness that is fostered in that culture was transformative for me in terms of how I showed up to my relationships, how I showed up to my work, how I showed up to input on my ideas, which I used to think was anybody fucking weighing into my idea is going to make it worse. I come up with the good version. Right. My job's to hold the line and not let it get worse. From there, I learned, I could be the editor and just listen to all input and then choose the things that make it better. I observed that's how a lot of artists did their work there. That's there's a lot of native curiosity there, and it's not just in Dutch people. Obviously, it's a cosmopolitan international city. But everyone who's opted into Amsterdam has an open mind, a growth mindset, and so it's just full of weird shit that just pushes you out of your comfort zone until you're like, all right, I'm going to allow myself. I'm just choosing not to be Glenn from America anymore. I'm just kind of blank canvas who's going to, we'll see what I come out with in the other end. But a lot of 72 and Sunny's founding values and principles I think are based on or informed by that experience.
Definitely. 7 years in Amsterdam definitely can transform you, man. That's awesome.
Right? And I didn't smoke a whole lot. A little bit. That stuff's heavy. I'm really about. I need to be clear-headed.
Okay, look, 4th question. With his large green eyes, the barrel-eye fish looks like an alien with a glass bulb on his head, out of a science fiction film. Now, at the first glance, it would seem that the fish's eyes were black dots. but in reality, they are located like farther above the head, and they are translucent. Not much is known about this barrel-eye fish, except that he lives in the North Pacific Ocean. Now, if there was a fish that symbolized the unknown future in the sea, the barrel-eye will be it. What do you think a creative person is gonna look like in 2073, 50 years from now? I mean, hopefully it's not gonna look like a barrel-eye fish, but what kind of quality do you think it's gonna have? I'm asking you a little bit of like effort here, imaginative, because nobody knows what the fuck is gonna happen in 50 years from now. So of course, like, you know, but
okay, fuck. So this is gonna test my like fish knowledge.
that's when, see, that's when on this answer you should have taken drugs, man. Because
yeah,
right here you could have.
coffee's not getting it done. All right, look. Well, two things. Okay, two answers came to mind, and
Okay.
so I'll give you the one that I think. I think if you look at the trend from the last 50 years to now as like maybe a sort of a predictor for where things are going, and with putting a pin in like AIs here, you know, the virtual, the everyone's appetite for sort of a virtual experience or world, or as virtual places as creative canvases. It's going to continue to divert, like creative opportunities will continue to diversify. I think more specialization will just continue to happen. You'll still need like ideas. You'll still need personal expression. Actually, I'm a believer that creative opportunities, creative jobs will be the most valuable over time, with automation probably taking on most hard skills, including medicine. So if you imagine that world in 50 years where, you know, us creative folks are running the candy store, I think the ones who are the most adaptable and to the conditions are going to win. Sort of like the fish you described has sort of evolved its way into this really weird environment. So anyway, the first fish that came to mind, I don't have a name for it. It's a future fish. Doesn't exist yet.
Future fish.
Future fucking fish. But it's probably like, well, I don't know if this, I hope everybody's not this fish, but I think there'll be some who there'll be some kind of fish that's going to evolve around that crazy floating trash island in the Pacific, and is going to like adapt and come up with some really cool ways of thriving around that thing. It'll find all the opportunity in this sort of trash island. And I think as creative people, we'll just have to, as long as we keep responding to our environment with looking for the opportunity in it, we'll evolve into these cool fish. Now, I'll admit, the first thing that came to mind when you said that was a mammal. It would be so much better if we were fucking orcas, like orca whales, like killer whales. That's what I want it to be.
But I like what you say. Very, very like insightful. Respond to the environment. I think that's like the secret, right? Because I think it's vital to truly have a response to what surrounds you, and that's where the DNA, the gene of the evolution come from, right? Like, you know, the moment you stop responding to the environment, that moment you stop evolving.
That's right. And be a junkie about like finding the opportunity. You know, the people who are, I think, responding positively to this AI narrative right now are the ones who've grabbed it, like, I want to play with that thing.
Like, I love that. You know, I love like the opportunity junkie definition. I love that. Be an opportunity junkie. That's great, man.
Opportunity junkfish.
Opportunity junkfish. Okay, good. Fifth question. Sailing is a matter of goals, and the right wind gives you momentum. The right goals bring you success, but you must have these goals clear in your mind for them to manifest. Now, Roy London was the acting teacher of Sharon Stone. And as Sharon Stone was growing, like, you know, in the industry as a young actress, at one point, Roy London asked her, what do you really want to get out of this? What do you want? Why are you doing this? And she gave him this answer that I think is so compelling, right? She say, look, all I want to do, I want to be able to sit across Robert De Niro Old Man own. And as a matter of fact, many years after she did it, in the fabulous movie Casino, when she got even like, the Academy Award. Now, bringing this into advertising and looking at your career, what was your real goal, so to speak? What was your initial goal? What did you get into this business real for, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm in here with De Niro and Sharon Stone, so that's pretty good. The part of me that was probably like a black sheep among my fellow colleagues and peers coming up in advertising, I just never was good at or cared about like the clever ads. I really appreciate people who can come up with them or write clever headlines and stuff. It was just never, it never stoked my fire, and it was never something I wanted to master. But I love story. And I love what it teaches us about ourselves. I like what it teaches us about the world and where we can take it, and the long resonant effect of a powerful story. So that and inspiration. I grew up doing a lot of sports, and I feel like there's so many lessons in it that that can translate to other parts of your life. So stories that inspire was I just wanted to make incredible stories that inspire. Awesome. And so when I look back at even when you asked that, I look back at my career, I kind of focused my energy on places where I could learn how to do that, be additive. So I was at Wieden Kennedy, which is I think a pretty powerful incubator for people's voices and narrative. I developed sort of my personal take on the hero's journey, which has been like kind of my life's experiment for 30 years of creativity, is telling the hero's journey largely through sports advertising, but other things. So if you were to look at my personal work, not 72 and Sunny, my personal work, it tends to be very narrative, not like a clever idea, but more of like a narrative, and an exploration of different heroes' journeys. And then 72 and Sunny is a platform designed to help people find their, what kind of hero they are, right? When we founded it, one of the first things John and I said to each other was like, well, what is it? People asked. And he's like, well, the hell if it'll be an ad, we'll probably make ads. We know how to do really well, but this should be a platform for personal growth and creative self-expression. And I was like, oh, it's a creative hero factory.
Self-expression is interesting. The reason why I got into the industry is because of a out of home. And I'll tell you a quick story.
You got into the business from out of home?
Because I wanted to talk to people, and I realized that one of the ways to talk to people, it was through writing headline on a billboard. And I tell you why, what got me the idea. So there was a very famous movie in Europe. Matthew Kassovitz did this movie. It's called La Haine.
Oh yeah, I love that movie. I was in Amsterdam when that came out. I watched that. Yeah.
Right. So, and there is a billboard in the movie. At one point of the movie, there's a billboard with a big globe, and it's written in French, "The word is yours." And then someone scratched the words. Actually, the word is the word is yours. Now, the funny thing is, like, that scene, "The word is yours," with the billboard, appear in Scarface.
Yeah, that's a Scarface homage.
On a blimp, right? And I always thought, like, at that time when that movie came out, I was really young. I was like, oh man, that's be so freaking cool to just use billboard just to talk to people. And at the time there was a friend of mine, and I was like, I just finished like graduate journalism. And this friend of mine says, like, why don't you just get into advertising, man? It's like, it's the way to go. You can talk to people like that. And so I did. In fact, my first piece, it was actually an out of home. That I really did, and it got like a little bit of buzz in Rome. So that's the story. It's interesting.
That's awesome. I have thought, it's funny. I recently was thinking maybe it's coming out of COVID, or maybe it was during COVID when the streets kind of emptied out and advertisers were not spending money on billboards and stuff. I thought it'd be cool if a bunch of creative people got together and just bought all of these billboards, and we just put up whatever we feel like the world needs to hear.
That is interesting you say that. So I was at Jungformat Hamburg for a couple of years. you probably know the agency, Jung von Matt.
Yep.
Yeah. So we had, the agency had a billboard, an out of home, right outside the agency. And this billboard was for the whole year, like to the agency. And every team, every month, we have a chance to compete and do an ad that will go onto the billboard for like 2 weeks. And I
Awesome.
always thought it was awesome. And that's what you say, like, you know, even like owns billboard and then communicate like that. That would be awesome, man.
All right, we're gonna talk on the side about that. We're gonna throw it
Yeah. Okay. Sixth question. When sailing, you must be aware of the return course. In some instances, to look back can be revelatory. 40 years from the day Ian Curtis, Joy Division lead singer, took his own life, his bandmate sat down and listened to that marvelous album of Closer. And they realized that all the signs of Ian Curtis' mental health and struggle were there. But back then, they didn't see those signs. They completely missed those signs. When looking at the return course of your career, looking back again, is there something that you didn't see back then, but now you see clearly? It doesn't have to. Maybe there is nothing.
No, there is so it's hard to come off that example and talk about something in my career, but I'll try. There's nothing as heavy as that. But I think, and I'm not sure how unique this is. I wish I was more conscious of the things that triggered like the source of fear. I just think it's the thing that gets in the way of great self-expression, great creativity. It's a great fear's a great motivator. So I definitely used it like a lot of people do. Like, you got a deadline, you're going to be in a room with your bosses, and you don't want to be embarrassed in front of Dan Wieden and stuff. So it was useful. I was aware of it as a motivational tool, but I wasn't aware of how it would unconsciously prevent me from maybe going and taking my ideas to someone else and being unafraid to show them and have them just say, I don't know, it's not good. You know, I was like, hey, I need this to be good. I am so tied up in this work. I can't have you say it's not good, because then I'm not good. And I just wish I had like a little more awareness or training maybe about the role of fear in creative process. And that's probably tied in with ego, the two of them. A 72 and Sunny has been a 20-year experiment to try to like address fear and ego in your work and try to train or inspire more bravery, inspire self-knowledge, self-awareness, so you can use it. I mean, your fear's not going anywhere. We all have it. It's
so interesting that you mentioned fear during this conversation. Like, you know that, I don't know if you are aware of
I think it's in the zeitgeist too. It's just where it's a culture of fear right now, and it's
yes.
And the creative work is I think suffering.
And also, you say that you play sport, right? What sport did you play?
I grew up casually playing kind of every sport: soccer, basketball, football. But I competed in track at a pretty high level throughout my.
And fear is a big part of sport, like sport life. And I think like how to master fear, to control fear, the presence of fear in sport is like essential. Like, you know, I'm very into like I mean, I played tennis back when I was a kid, but I'm very into boxing, and so like, you know, and fear is one of the single best element that, like, you know, fighters use to progress. And like, you know, so it's very interesting that you mentioned that, like, as a sport guy coming from that.
It has a role in creative development, and so if you don't understand it, I think it can control you. If you do understand it, you can actually use it to make your work better and leverage it. And so I just see a lot of that in culture right now. I see a lot of it in our industry right now. I see it in the products we're making. There's a safety, there's a repetition in at large, and I'm eager to kind of like, instead of just be like, hey, be brave, everybody. I'm taking a new tack of like, hey, what are the fears? Let's confront them. And put some handlebars on them so you can like ride that fucker like a bike.
Hey man, we got the shore. We arrived at the shore, and it's the last question we asked to our guests. If there was a wind that blew your sails and you had to name it, what would the name be?
If I had to name a wind that would blow,
Hmm,
well, you mean
a wind, just like,
like
you know,
a
that
proper
push.
name
Yeah.
or like a thing? Okay. I don't know if I got getting this right. I hope I'm understanding it right. The first word that came to mind was purpose.
Purpose. That's awesome. That is awesome
I
because
just,
purpose push you.
I want to apply what I do and what we all do, and this conversation to something that makes a difference and moves the world in the way I think it is best for the future and for us. And
That's
I
awesome.
sometimes, in creative, you wonder, why am I doing this? And right now, everything in my lens, if something comes my way that's highly purposeful, or I feel like can give me a sense of purpose, then that feels like wind in my sails.
Hey, Glenn, I can't thank you enough. I know like you're super busy and like, so I know that this was like, a gift to not just me, but to everybody like that is going to have the chance to listen to this episode. So thank you so much, man. Really appreciate.
Your pod, this is a gift. These are amazing. I thank you so much for the how you kind of dug into it. It's really inspiring. I learned a lot too. Travel is the traveler.
Thank you, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.